the field goal. It'll be Jason Chingel out of the hold of Mesco. Good snap, good hold, and the kick is blocked. Appalachian State has stunned the college football world. One of the greatest upsets in sports history.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman.
Good morning, and a pleasant good Wednesday morning to each and every one of you. This glorious weather here in greater Cincinnati, Ohio, and specifically the heart of Hamilton, Ohio. Our Chatterbox Studios continues. Nothing but sunshine. Not sure we've seen a cloud in 4 or 5 days, maybe longer. Casey, Paul, good morning, men.
Good morning, Tom.
Jacob, good morning. Everybody doing all right?
Fantastic, Tom. How are you doing today?
Paul, you look like you got a little sun yesterday.
Yeah, a little bit. We were outside talking to all the Big East coaches for the baseball tournament, so we were outside for about 7 straight hours, and no sunblock led to a little bit of life in the face.
Turf field.
Yeah. No turf.
Natural grass.
Natural grass.
Prasco. It's a big league place.
Big league place.
And you'll be doing the play-by-play for the Musketeers. Or for the conference, or what?
Yeah, so we rotate through. So tonight I did get assigned the Xavier game, but then tomorrow it depends on who wins and loses.
Who is the favorite in the Big East Baseball Conference tournament?
So Connecticut is the 9th-ranked team in the country.
So they are the overwhelming favorite.
So I wouldn't say they're the overwhelming favorites because they did lose a game. I mean, they have lost a couple of games here lately, so I wouldn't say they're as overwhelming as they have been the last 2 years. They've won it 2 years in a row. So I don't think they're as overwhelming as they have been the last 2 years. I think all 3 of the other teams have a decent chance, and Connecticut's in anyway. So, Connecticut's going to make the NCAA tournament. So for the conference, it would be good to see one of the other teams win it, get 2 teams in.
Of the other remaining teams,
yes.
What are Xavier's chances?
Xavier has a pretty good chance because this year they finally have the pitching.
Okay. Yeah, that's key.
Years past, especially in a tournament like this, Tom, where you're playing double elimination and you're playing, potentially 4 games, 5 games in 3 days, depending on how you do it.
Yeah.
It's all about day one. Because if you lose day one and you go into the loser's bracket, and then you have to come out of that, you got to win again Thursday, Friday, then win 2 Saturday. That's so hard to do. But if you win on day one, changes the whole complexion of the deal. But pitching this year is, as it is every year in a tournament like this, it's huge. So
Xavier faces who tonight?
They play Seton Hall at 6:30.
And Seton Hall any good?
They beat Xavier 2 out of 3 in the series about a month ago.
Oh.
So that was it. But it was very close. 1-run games at Xavier.
Show's an hour long today. Box lunch comes your way at noon. Looking ahead to tomorrow, we're very excited about tomorrow. We're excited about today. One day at a time, as they say, right? So we welcome you to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm Tom Brenneman, along with a cast of thousands here in the studio and the chat and online. We come your way Monday through Friday, 10
A
to 12
P.
And you can find us. Go to YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. You can also find us in podcast form. Just search Off the Bench with Tom Brenneman and you're dialed in. So, after a series opening win on Monday, it was back to the loss column last night for the Redlegs. And most importantly, this disturbing trend continues for this young trio of Red starters. In this case, Graham Ashcraft. After beginning the season as one of the best pitchers in the National League, granted small sample size through March and April, Ashcraft was lit up for the 3rd time in May. In 5 starts this month, and we will get into some of these numbers in a minute. Ashcraft is 0-3. In 5 starts, he's thrown 23 innings. He's allowed 27 runs. That's an earned run average of up above 10. Are you worried? Tell the truth. T.J. Friedel, he returned last night, had a couple of hits, scored a run. And how about rookie Matt McLean? You have this video, right?
I do.
Well, let's see it. This came in the third inning against Adam Wainwright. They call that oppo power, opposite field power, in Great American Small Park. But how about Matt McLean? His first major league home run. He drove in 3 runs last night. Good for him. Congratulations. And against Adam Wainwright. That's big time. Be able to tell the kids, the grandkids about that. Adam Wainwright, one of the best pitchers over the last 15 years. Out of the bullpen, starter, he's done it all. But his 3 RBIs not nearly enough in an 8-5 loss. Game 3 of the series, and that's a 4-game series, is tonight. First pitch, 6:40. Lefty Steven Matz. Everybody thought this guy was going to be great, me included, when he came up with the Mets. Battled a lot of injuries, kind of up and down. When he's on, man, he's on. When he's not, he's not. And he'll be opposed by right-hander Ben Lively. The 2 teams will wrap up the series tomorrow afternoon. Elsewhere in baseball, Garrett Cole reached 2,000 strikeouts in his career for the Yankees last night. And he did it the 3rd fastest in the history of Major League Baseball. 278 games. The big unit, Randy Johnson, got there in 262 games. Clayton Kershaw did it in 277 games. Interesting to note, Cole also did it in the 3rd fewest number of innings, behind Chris Sale and the great Pedro Martinez. Cole is just the 88th pitcher in the history of baseball to eclipse 2,000 strikeouts. How bad are the Oakland A's? They lost last night to Seattle, putting their record this year at 10-40. 10-40. It makes last year's Red start look like the 27 Yankees.
Ooh.
It's the 4th worst start in Major League history since the 1932 Boston Red Sox. On the hardwood, don't count the Boston Celtics out quite yet. They held off elimination in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals last night in Miami. A 116-99 win, so Game 5 tomorrow night. They go back to the Boston Garden. Miami can close them out, leading the series 3-1. The University of Cincinnati broke ground on its new 84,000 square foot indoor football practice facility and performance center yesterday. It's expected to take 2 years from start to finish. Xavier Paul, big news.
Yeah.
Going to play Purdue in what is called the Gavitt Games under the former great Big East Commissioner Dave Gavitt. And that's this upcoming basketball season. The game is scheduled as part of the Big East Big Ten Challenge to be played on the Boilermakers' home floor. Now, we were talking about this earlier. The big man, Zach Edey, Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Right? He has not decided yet whether he's turning pro.
Yeah, no, he has not, and he only has a few days left to decide if he wants to do that. I don't know what he gains from coming back, but I also don't think he would be drafted all that high anyway. If he would be drafted at all, I'm sure somebody with his size might take a flyer on him late in the 2nd round, but he's not somebody that's going to get drafted very high, if drafted at all. But like I said, if you come back, what's his stock? How much? What does he have to prove? Like, we know he's a big guy. What else do we need to know?
Maybe
about?
he likes college. Maybe he wants to be a 2-time Player of the Year. I mean, maybe he wants to try to win a national championship. They got a good team.
He also hasn't been playing basketball all that long. I mean, it's this crazy stat that I always give out is that there was a player on Purdue this year who had been on Purdue longer than Zach Edey had been playing the sport of basketball. So he still has stuff to learn. But from that perspective, we'll see what he decides to do. But either way, it'll be a fun game up at Mackey.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Great environment, great arena. Yeah. Mackey Arena up there. NFL owners, in the name of player safety, and we will get to this in a minute, are changing the kickoff rules, apparently, for, again, this upcoming season. A fair catch is being encouraged after teams started popping up kickoffs in recent years. The fair catch would be placed at the receiving team's 25-yard line, regardless of where in the field of play the ball is caught. Also, FC Cincinnati. First time they've played, I think, the New York Red Bulls in 3 years, did I read? 4 years, 5 years, something like that?
Yeah, since 2019, I think.
Is that what it was? I couldn't remember. It was 19 or 17. But they won it penalty kicks, right?
Yep.
To advance in the round of 8, in the Lamar Hunt Open Cup.
Your favorite tournament in the country.
I have nothing against the Lamar Hunt Open Cup. I have met the Hunt family, including Clark, who owns the Kansas City Chiefs. He is a very decent man. His dad was a very good man. I have nothing against the Lamar Hunt Open Cup.
Well,
I just don't like it in the middle of your other season.
Yeah, I'm about to
go play it in November.
About to break some news to you. One of our backfielders, defenders, they got hurt right before the end of the game, limping off the field, some sort of hamstring injury.
Perfect.
One of our starters at that. One of the few starters that actually play in the game, they got hurt. How do you feel about that, Tom?
That's what I'm talking about. That's one of a number of things I'm talking about when it comes to playing these senseless tournaments inside of your own regular season where you're trying to win a championship for yourselves, for your coaches, for your fan base, for your city. And now you get some guy hurt because he's playing in the Lamar Hunt Open. Come on. A lot of people get on me for beating this up. It's not going to stop, so just get used to it. It's not stopping, especially if guys start dropping like flies. All right, I want to get to a couple of topics today. I want to start with, were we able to get that graphic put together or no?
Yep, I've got them.
Okay, so listen, and I'm going to take this we are going to take this another step further. And start comparing some of these numbers to some other great pitchers or pitching trios in recent years. All right? We're going to make the comparison ultimately to the three guys who pitched in Oakland that led that team to the playoffs every year. They could never get past, the divisional round or the league championship series round in Oakland when they had Tim Hudson, Mark Mulder, Barry Zito. Now, that was a big three. And we're going to have some numbers that back it up. Apples to apples on this deal, okay? Some high school guys, some college guys. But we're going to look at their age and their second year in the big leagues. The other two of the three we're going to put on the list because we're not going to include Greg Maddux on the Atlanta Braves big three. They got him to the playoffs 13 years in a row, whatever it was. But Glavine and Smoltz we are because same deal. They come up to the big leagues young like Green, Lodolo, Ashcraft. Where were they at the same age or at the same point in time in their career, second year in the big leagues? So we're going to have all that coming up. We're going to wait till we get to the end of the month. But when you start looking inside some of these numbers, I ask a very serious question when I say this, okay? Are you worried? What if this big three doesn't turn out to be what everybody thinks it's going to be? And I'm not suggesting it won't. It very well may turn out to be a big three to lead the Reds to contention and perhaps one day the postseason and the World Series. But let's start with Graham Ashcraft.
Can we actually start with Hunter Green?
We can start with Hunter Green.
Sorry.
No problem. So we start with Hunter Green. Let's look in the month of April. So we're going to go games started, record. Okay, some put more stock in that than others. The number of innings pitched the number of hits allowed, and the number of runs allowed. In the month of April, Hunter Green, and this is March and April, Hunter Green gets 5 starts. He goes 0-1 in 5 starts, so not even averaging 5 innings per start. He goes 24 innings. He allows the same number of hits. He gives up only 8 runs. Looking good. How about May? 4 games started so far. Still winless on the year. 22 innings pitched. 26 hits allowed. And 17 runs. Not good. Okay, let's move on. Who's next?
Let's do Nick Lodolo.
Let's go look at Nick Lodolo. Now, this is a little unfair because he's been injured. But these are his overall numbers on the year. He has made 7 starts. He, too, is not averaging 5 innings per start on the year. And he's had a couple of great outings. Now, I know this is small sample size stuff. I get it. But these are the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. In 34 innings, he has given up 50 base hits and 24 runs. Now, we're going to give him a little bit of rope because apparently his leg's been bothering him going all the way back to spring training. He kept pitching through it. They thought originally it was a calf injury. Then they find out it's more the tibia, the fibula, and that's serious stuff. I don't know when we're going to see him again. I've brought up on this show, his isn't broken. I've broken mine. He was a young man in his 20s. I was in my late 40s. And I'm no athlete. He is. But anybody will tell you, you're better off breaking your thigh, your femur, than you are a tibia or a fibula. Okay. So now let's get to Ashcraft. April, 5 starts, averaging 6 innings per start, plus he allowed in the 30 innings 29 hits and just 7 runs. Here we are in May. 5 games started, again without a win. 23 innings pitched. Barely over 4. It's 4, less than 4 1/3. He has given up a whopping 38 hits, 27 runs. So, gentlemen, I turn to you. And our boss, Trace Fowler, is all over my case in the chat saying this is a bad take. Could somebody explain to me why it's a bad take? Maybe why I get Trace in here why it's a bad take.
Look, I'm not going to argue against it. I mean,
you're allowed. This is an open forum here. You can disagree.
I want you to just quickly finish your thought. What are you trying to get at with these? Are you trying to say that?
Here's what I'm ultimately. I'm really not getting at anything at the end of the day. I'm just laying it out there that, and we're going to roll this into a different kind of discussion a little bit later on. But about, I have always said one of the greatest dangers in life, expectations. Now, you can have drive and goal, and you better have drive and goals, right, in your life, or you're going nowhere fast. Nowhere fast. There's got to be pressure. Now, some people handle pressure better than other people, but there has to be some pressure. There has to be some adversity and perseverance. Nothing comes easy for every single person. Everything doesn't go smooth. So where we're going here now is all of these guys have tasted success most of their lives, right?
Right.
Little League, they're the best guy, right? High school, best guy. College for some, best guy. Minor leagues, best guy. Now all of a sudden, you're at the pinnacle. This is, as we say, the big leagues. I am interested to see how these young men now respond. Because right now, all three, whether it be injury for Lodolo, ineffectiveness for the other two, albeit a decent start by Green his last time out. Where do these young men go from here?
Well, I mean, the month of May has just not been good for this Reds baseball team in general. And we kind of knew going into it that it was going to be a tough stretch anyways. A lot of tough matchups. I want to say that Ashcraft is more closer to the April than he is to the May. You're looking at probably more closer to like that 25, 28 hits a month, closer to like that 15 run. What's more likely is that he's somewhere in between. You look at Hunter Green, and Hunter Green to me has not shown that he can get through yet, that he can get through many innings. I mean, it's just that simple. He just can't. I don't know what it takes for him to get over that hump.
Longevity in the starts. He went 7 innings the other day.
Well, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, so, we're talking about how do you bounce back, okay? And you can only go by what have you done for me lately, right? So his most recent start, to your point, Casey, he made a step in a positive direction. He was much more pitch efficient. He was only at 85 pitches at the end of the 6th inning. Normally, he's at that at the end of the 3rd or 4th innings, which is why he's having to come out of games. So, step in the right direction. But continue, please.
But the one thing that is the most concerning out of all this, really, is just the amount of hits that these guys are giving up compared to April. April was like that time where people are getting – it's like the beginning of a football season where first couple weeks you're getting into your groove. You're trying to figure out your identity as a team. Now we're in the month of May, and it's like, okay, people are starting to really get into their groove. They're hitting well, and our pitching just they're just getting hit too often. That's just all it really boils down to, is that there's not confusion. There's no
Nick Kirby makes a good point in the chat that the walk rates are lower, but what do you make of the walk rates versus the hit rates?
Well, I was just saying about that because I saw Nick chimed in, and we appreciate him jumping in because he is on his game when it comes to baseball and on the Reds and everything, and I respect anything he has to say. I might disagree with it, but I certainly respect it. I mean, he's a knowledgeable guy. He follows his stuff. So I give it up to Nick Kirby. But when he makes a comment, I would rather them get hit hard than giving up walks. I have a hard time understanding that logic.
Yeah.
Now, walks will make you crazy. And that old thing in the ballpark, walks will haunt. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt. Their walk rate is not bad. But look, there are some guys with their stuff, okay? And you would think that Green would fall into this category, right? Where their stuff is good enough where they can pitch around a walk or two. I'm not saying you want that to happen. But I've seen a lot of really good pitchers out there who will walk some guys, but their stuff is good enough where they're not getting hit hard and they're missing bats. These guys aren't missing bats. Okay, so when you say, let's assume for a second their walk ratio wasn't all that good. What would those numbers look like now at the rate they're getting hit? Right. Now, you can say woulda, coulda, shoulda, and I get that. So, okay, their walk rate is what it is. But these guys are getting hit, and hit hard. And I know they're young. And listen, I'm all in for giving them the benefit of the doubt here. But again, it all gets back to what I have said from the very, very beginning. Don't buy the hype for anybody. Don't buy it. Don't buy the guy who's a number one prospect with the Dodgers. Don't buy the guy who's a number one prospect with the Blue Jays. Don't buy it. You can root for him. You can hope for him. But what do they do when they get here? This is the big leagues. Experience counts for something. The more repetition you have doing certain things, the chances of you getting better are extraordinarily likely. So, they're all young. They're all in their second year. Each of the three has had to battle back from varying degrees of injuries. Green all the way back from Tommy John. Ashcraft missed time last year. Lodolo did too. Lodolo is hurt again this year. I'm just saying that it's nice to have hope in all three of these guys if you're a Reds fan. I want to see all of them do beautifully. I don't want to see any person in this world fail. I don't root for guys to fail. If you want to find people who root for people to fail, just jump on Twitter for 5 seconds. And you'll find a whole boatload of them by the millions. And all they're out there doing is looking to beat up somebody who made a mistake or just pound somebody because they don't want them to succeed. Because they have issues in their lives. All of us are hoping these young men are everything you want them to be. You want them to be. You want good things to happen to good guys. They seem like good guys. They're articulate. They're well-spoken. You can tell they're decent human beings. They've never been in any trouble. But I'm just saying, don't buy the hype. You ask me where all this is going. That's where it's going. And these numbers are going to tell us and what happens from here moving forward. But the question I have for you is, Paul, go ahead.
I was going to ask you a question. What's the sample size you need here, Tom? I mean, I know it's only April and May, so you're going through these games and you're looking at these numbers. You're comparing April and May, but we're only talking about 5 starts in April or
and that's
4 starts in May or whatever it might be. So to you, as somebody who has been around the game for as long as you have and has seen these guys, talk to these coaches, drawing on that experience, what's the sample size you need to render a bigger judgment on?
Well, I'm going to give them for sure through the end of this season.
Yeah.
For sure. And I mean, look, when I say that, you've just given Hunter Green a 6-year contract. And you have Lodolo and Ashcraft under control. And you can throw Williamson into that thing. I mean, he was a big guy coming over in the Seattle trade when you shipped off Winker and Suarez. I had no problem with those guys getting shipped off. A lot of people were upset about that trade. I didn't mind that trade. Suarez was starting to spiral downward. Awesome dude, one of my favorite guys I've ever met in baseball, Eugenio Suarez. Love that guy. Winker, you couldn't keep him on the field. Guy's hurt all the time. So, look, I have no problem with it. And you have all these guys under control. So even if they don't have good years this year, they're all going to be here next year. If good Lord willing, they're healthy. I mean, Green's going to be in there, guaranteed deal. The other guys aren't even up for arbitration yet at the end of the year. So they're basically on less than rookie contracts to draw the professional football equivalent of it. But what you want to see, Paul, is, in my opinion, what I want to see is I want to see guys who, okay, they hit this bump in the road. What happens next? Now, some people are going to lay that at the feet of the pitching coach, Derek Johnson. He's a part of this thing. Some are going to lay it at the feet of David Bell. In my opinion, David Bell doesn't have anything to do with this. Nothing to do with it.
I got one question for you, Tom, about kind of something similar, or actually not similar. I want to circle back to Kirby's comment about he would rather have guys be hitting it hard than the pitchers walking batters. Is that coming from a place of the reason why they're giving up all these hits? Is it maybe because, and not so many walks, is it because that they know and that the Reds organization knows, David Bell knows that the defense is not solid? So, or not, I don't know. That's not the correct
That
way
is
to
the
phrase
correct
it.
term.
but it's not solid. So like you're giving them more chances to perform if you're letting it be fly balls, or like I don't know if there's like any sort of scheming that goes on with that. I would imagine that walking would be more efficient for a defense struggling team than
well, you want
getting
the
hit
ball
in the
put in
field.
play on the fewest number of pitches possible. And what you have is say like a guy like Hunter Green, okay, and a lot of big strikeout pitchers, all right? You'll hear this setup, and I'm not talking about the established future Hall of Fame guys. Some of the names I ripped off a minute ago talking about Garrett Cole strikeouts, the Randy Johnsons, the Clayton Kershaws, the Pedro Martinez of the world. I'm not talking about those guys. Because they were throwing 125, 135 pitches in a game. But a guy like Hunter Green, you'd like to see him become a lot like Cueto, for example, in recent terms. Cueto was a big strikeout guy, could have been an enormous strikeout guy, but he finally figured it out as his first major league debut. I did the game against Arizona. He punches out 10 in 7 innings. He could have been that guy. His stuff was good enough to be that guy. But he figured out, wow, I could find myself in the game in the 7th or 8th inning if, I locate the fastball, let the guy put the ball in play, hit a ground ball to the second baseman, first, second, third pitch of the at-bat, rather than strike 1, ball 1, foul ball 2, ball 3, swing and a miss. Now you're at a 6, 7 pitch at-bat instead of 2 pitch at-bat. Because all those pitches will catch up with you at the end of the. There's no doubt in my mind the defense, somewhere in the back of their minds, and they're never going to admit it, somewhere in the back of the mind, if you've got a bad defense playing behind you, it will start to weigh you down. Now, they've gotten a little bit better on defense since they moved Senzel to third base. Steer was starting to play pretty well down at third, and they moved him over to first base. Okay, and they'll mix and match some guys in there with Stevenson and some other guys at first, and the whole Votto thing. We'll see how it plays out. Look, at the end of the day, Paul, were you getting ready to ask me a question?
I was just going to say, was there somebody in particular that stands out when you talk? Because you've talked so much in the last few weeks about not buying the hype on these guys and waiting until they prove something in the majors and getting to a point where they have a solid major league career. Is there somebody that you're thinking of that you remember earlier in your career that you were in on that didn't pan out that has caused you to think like this, or is this just an evolution of how you have thought from the 30-plus years you were in?
It is just a matter of talking to people who know a lot more about it than I do, that have been around it a lot longer than I have. And, I'm talking about major league managers through the years. I'm talking about major league general managers through the years, talking about players themselves in regard to other players, and not, saying, that guy ain't going to make it. I don't mean that stuff. I'm just talking about you listen to enough people, and if you really listen to what they're saying, and they're not trying to sell you a bill of goods, because there are certain general managers, you'll sit there and talk about guys in their farm system, and they will tell you how great each and every one of them is going to be when they know in their heart of hearts that's not true. They know it. The numbers bear it out. The chances of becoming, from AA to AAA to the major leagues, even being just an average player and sticking around for a long, long time, the odds are nearly impossible. They're overwhelmingly impossible. Now you're talking about those odds coming even further, getting longer, when you're talking about becoming an everyday player or a guy who stays in a starting rotation for 3, 4, 5 years. And now you take the odds even longer of that same person becoming a great player or pitcher. So that's all it is. Is just talking to, and look, the numbers bear it out on how long these careers last, right? We see it in other sports. It's the same thing. I'm not saying this is exclusive to baseball. There was somebody out there, a lot of somebodies out there, and it doesn't mean they're dumb. They just happen to see something in Ryan Leaf that they liked better about him than Peyton Manning. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't make them an idiot. Doesn't mean they need to be scolded for it. That's not the point of this. And the Reds have all the hope in the world about these guys. I mean, look at somebody just in the chat, Alex says. What about John Ross? Again, I'm not beating up John Ross. I'm just saying, because the guy runs a 4.1 for whatever he ran 40, fastest all time, all that stuff, right? Okay, that's awesome. And some of those metrics they use at the combine, in football's case, or some of the numbers they put on players when you're scouting them on the scale that they use, you know, the 40 being a highest as a base runner or an outfielder or a throwing arm or power or speed or whatever it might be, those are all fine. For these young men, it's going to be all about, because they have the stuff to get it right. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. But more than anything else in this Reds franchise and the future success and or failure of this franchise, and whether these young men like it or not, but they know it, the Reds are putting almost all the eggs in that basket.
But you have to put your eggs in some basket.
No, I
right?
understand that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you got to.
Like at some point, you got to plant your flag in the sand and do something.
And those are the guys. And they have shown you enough by what they've done coming up. With the stuff that they have, they've shown you enough that you can plant that flag in the sand and say, these are our guys moving forward and we believe in them. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have 5 starters in a rotation.
Yeah.
And most general managers, I think, they'd love to take the chance on, if you throw in Abbott, all 5 of these guys. Green, Lodolo, Ashcraft, Williamson, Abbott. Every general manager in baseball would love to have those 5 guys. Maybe not in their rotation today, but certainly within the next year or two. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will see how that plays out. The other thing I wanted to get into a little bit here was this player safety thing in the NFL. Now, when I was doing the NFL for 25 years, every year for 25 years, right when Fox started in 1994, we would have a seminar out in California where Roger Goodell would come out, and there'd be all the big guys you see there on Fox, right? At the time, the Joe Bucks, the Troy Aikmans, the Terry Bradshaws, the Howie Longs, the Michael Strahan, the Jimmy Johnsons, all these guys, right? And then all the producers and all the directors and all the announce teams. And back when we first started, Madden and Summerall were there, and Stockton and Millen and all these guys, John Lynch and Brian Billick and Chris Spielman, on and on and on and on and on. And all the producers and directors and the graphics guys, the guys who work in the truck. So we'd have, a few hundred people in this big meeting room at a hotel in L.A. And every year, over the course of 2 or 3 days, you would have different, just like all of you, when you go to some, seminar or convention for your workplace, you have certain topics that will take up from 10 to noon. And then you take a lunch break. And then from whatever to whatever, right? All the way until 5, 6 o'clock. So Roger Goodell would come in and would talk about a number of different topics going on around the league, and people would ask questions. No one in there was allowed to record anything, whether it be on your phone or an audio device, whatever it might be, and it was just a very frank, open discussion. There would be players there, former players there, guys like Bradshaw or Howie Long or whomever, Tony Siragusa, God rest his soul, who they would really challenge Goodell about player safety and where the league really is in regard to player safety. I will say, whether you like Goodell or don't like Goodell, whether you like the NFL or don't like the NFL, meaning the corporate NFL, okay, I genuinely believe they very much care about player safety. If they think of what the alternative would be if they didn't. Is it good for the business of the National Football League to have Aaron Rodgers concussed? Is it good for the National Football League and their television partners that are paying billions of dollars over the length of contracts to have the Chiefs playing the Bengals and Pat Mahomes can't play because he's hurt? No. It's bad for business. So they want the key parts of people who are good for their business to be as healthy as they can. They have poured in hundreds of millions of dollars, and that is not an exaggeration, maybe billions of dollars into player safety issues. They basically, the NFL, is basically seed money for hundreds of companies that have sprung up through the years that they want to do some kind of research and testing on a helmet or shoulder pads or whatever it might be. And the league seed money for a lot of these companies, and a lot of them fail. A lot of them, the tests don't bear out that it's worthwhile to think about having the league, bring that product in. Okay, so I think they really do care. I really do. And part of that seminar would also include the guy who's the chief doctor, medical director of the National Football League. And they would spend, Lord knows how much money on all of these different, they put up a graphic of punt returns, number of concussions, okay, and all this kind of thing. Kickoff returns, number of concussions, right? Regular plays from scrimmage, number of concussions. And they would go into all of this kind of thing. And so they are paying attention to it, and they want to fix it. Here's where the NFL starts to lose some people, and especially its players. If you're going to sell the argument of player safety, let's look at what transpired the last 24 hours from the owners' meetings. One day, you're going to flex Thursday night football games for weeks 13 through 17. So let's just theoretically play this out for a second. During the first 12 weeks of the season, the games are already posted on who's playing Thursday night. No player likes to play on Thursday night, but they get it. It's part of the business of football. It's big money for the league, which means it's big money for the players, so they go along with the program, okay? You and I would do the same thing. We would, okay? We would. If it put extra dough in your pocket, and okay, one time during the year, I got to reload, feel like I was just in a car crash on a Sunday, and I got to find a way to get back out there Thursday night, you're going to do it one time. But now all of a sudden, so for those first 12 weeks, let's just say the Bengals, they're scheduled to play on a Thursday night, right? Within the first 12 weeks of the season. But that's your only game. Teams in the league only play one time on Thursday. That was the rule until 2 days ago. So now all of a sudden, you look at the Thursday night game schedule for this year, weeks 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Those 5 weeks are the one game for each of those teams scheduled for Thursday where they have to play on a Thursday. Well, now all of a sudden the league is saying, well, we're going to flex those out, or at least leave it open to the possibility of flexing it out. Well, what does that mean? It means a certain group of players will not play on a Thursday night the entire year. That's number one. And it's not a guarantee they'll all be flexed out. Number two is there will be another group of players who will play 2 times on a Thursday night, where the risk of injury, without question, has to increase. With fatigue comes risk of injury, right?
Right.
Okay, so now they do that. And you had some owners that were livid. They needed 24 votes in the affirmative to pass this. They just got to 24. Then they come out yesterday, and in the name of player safety, they changed the kickoff rules because most concussions in a football game at the very highest level, and all the way down to youth level, well, maybe not youth, but high school and college, most occur on punt returns or kickoff returns. And what teams were doing was they were saying, okay, we're going to find this way after the rule was changed a few years ago. We're going to start popping the kick up. So the kickers would work on this where they pop that thing up. Guy would have to catch it at the 20, and I mean, pow, okay? And now the team has the ball at the 20-yard line. They decide as soon as the ball leaves the kicker's foot, it doesn't matter if it's a ground ball that's picked up by somebody at the 35. You want to call a fair catch? Call a fair catch, your team gets the ball at the 25-yard line. Thus, you avoid the collisions that take place on kickoff returns. Guys flying down the field, pow, hitting one another at full speed. Do you think the NFL is being hypocritical, gentlemen, within a 24-hour time frame, or are you saying that's just the price of doing business?
No, they're being hypocritical.
Casey's not a big fan of the NFL, are you?
I'm not a fan of the money aspect of the NFL. I get it. I understand why they did it. It's for the money. I mean, they just want their primetime games to be good games. But
how much of this is reactionary to how poor the Thursday night games were this year?
For the NFL's perspective?
Yeah.
How
much of this do you think is reactionary because we had to suffer through all of these horrific games on Thursday night this year? Games that, honestly, we turned off after the first quarter pretty much every week. Or never even turned on in the first place because you get home and it'd be the second quarter and it would already be something terrible. We had what? However many Thursday night games we had. Maybe had 2 good ones this year. Maybe.
I mean, there were some Thursday night games that were unwatchable.
Right?
Yeah,
there was.
Almost all of them.
I would say that in recent memory, it's been a bad slate, or just last year. But
that's what I mean.
I do not fall under the hive mind of this thought that all Thursday night football games were terrible this year. I can tell you that there was at least 5 or 6 games that were good, but people just dismissed the thought of it because the first 5 or 6 were just miserable.
Yeah, they were bad. I don't think I watched one of them.
out of like the first 6 games on Thursday Night Football, the only one that was good also happened to be the one where Tua got concussed.
Yeah.
Against the Bengals, which if you were watching that game, the Bengals pretty much had control of that game for the most part. But other than that, yeah, I mean, I do think it's a little bit reactionary from the league. I think it's hypocritical. I think every team should have to play a Thursday night game if you're going to do that. I don't think that it's right for a team to be forced to play twice. I don't agree with that.
Have you seen the schedule for Thursday night football this year? Jacob brought this up earlier. Have you seen the schedule?
I've not seen the schedule.
Okay,
no.
so it was weeks 13 through 17 that they're talking about the possibility of flexing out.
Yep.
So let's just look at those 5 weeks in the matchups. The week 13 is not going to get changed. It doesn't matter if neither team's won a game because the Dallas Cowboys are on.
Yep.
Okay? So Seahawks play the Cowboys. Okay, check that one off. Ain't changing. Patriots at the Steelers. Now, we don't know what's going to happen. We have no crystal ball. But television ratings matter, and the Patriots and Steelers are good for television, historically. They always have been. Now, both teams might stink. Maybe they flex it out. But those last 3 weeks, you've got Chargers, Raiders, right?
Yep.
Are you kidding? You've got Saints, Rams. Saints, Rams.
Big time.
None of these are division games except for that Chargers, Raiders. And then you have Jets, Browns. Now you've got Aaron Rodgers. Okay? And I think the Brownies are going to be pretty good. But, again, you would be looking at teams, let's just say weeks 10, 11, 12. So the Bengals play the Ravens week 11. So you would be 11 weeks into the season, and in theory, you could ask the Bengals to come back within 2 to 3 weeks and have to do it again on a Thursday night. How are we looking?
Not great. I was just going to mention here as well, Tom, that week 14, I know that was the Patriots-Pittsburgh game. If you look at the schedule, like there's Buffalo at Kansas City, Seattle at San Francisco, Like there's actually some, like if you go through, you can kind of pick and choose which games are going to be the ones that they flex it to.
If all goes according to plan.
Right. And I didn't have enough time to really look through the rest of the weeks, but like that Los Angeles Las Vegas game, that's a divisional matchup. I don't think they would flex that, but if they did, you're looking at maybe Dallas at Buffalo, Philadelphia at Seattle. I think that it's. I was trying to look through and see like maybe the Bengals get flexed on one of those times, but I didn't think there was any of the Vikings Bengals on week 14 or 15. I'm sorry. That maybe.
So that means 4 weeks later, if that game for some reason ended up being a game, right? Now, if you go way back, I think the Eagles play the first week of that Thursday night football, right?
The first week?
Yeah, in Philly playing that first week.
It's Detroit versus Kansas City week 1.
Well, I meant that when they really kick into gear. That's a season opener. But the next Thursday night in
Minnesota
Philly,
versus Philly, yeah.
Okay, so Philly, you talk about Minnesota. So Minnesota would have played that, and now you fast forward that to the Bengals game you talked about, right? Minnesota and the Bengals. So Minnesota would have played a Thursday night, the second game of the year. Okay, maybe they don't have to do it again until week 15. It's not good for anybody, but there's a big difference. Same with Philadelphia. They do it the second week of the year. Okay, maybe they do it week 15. The Bengals or the Ravens, if all of a sudden they're playing week 11 on a Thursday night, and now you're going to ask one of those two to turn around and come back and do it again 2 or 3 weeks later? Brutal.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a fan of it, Tom. I don't like it at all. I think the problem, what Thursday night football should be, it should just be the rivalry week or the rivalry day for a certain division. I don't get why you would even risk a Jets versus Cleveland. Like, make it a little more interesting. Make it Bengals Browns or Steelers Browns. Just make it something to where it's Thursday night. We're gonna be showcasing a divisional opponent, and I guarantee you're probably not gonna be flexing many of those games anyways, because you're going to get the diehards of your teams watching that. I think divisional games are much more interesting, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the numbers don't suggest that. So.
Amazon paid $11 billion, that's billion, to televise Thursday night football for 11 years. $1 billion per year. And back to Paul's original question. When you're paying that kind of cash, $1 billion per year, right? You want the you want the Bears again. Well, I mean, don't even put the Bears. You want the Texans against the Jaguars for $1 billion a year?
Well, it's better than getting like two terrible teams that don't even have anything to really fight for, is what I'm getting at. Like, why would you have like the Falcons versus the Raiders on a Thursday night game, which were some of the matchups that we got last year on Thursday Night Football. Now, granted, it was because Denver got a lot of those, and there was a couple other teams that probably didn't deserve to be on Thursday.
They did swing and miss on the Russell Wilson thing.
But I mean, let's keep it simple. You can market it to where it's rivalry week for this team or this division or something like that. I don't see how that can't be a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, market it in a way to where the fans are like, all right, this is the rivalry day for this division. I don't know.
If you want to put into perspective, and you were talking about the ratings, right?
Yeah.
The first year last year, they were only down 400,000 people per game. That is not a huge number when you're going from basically over-the-air TV, okay, to a streaming service for the first year. That is not an enormous hit. To give you an idea, to put things in perspective about maybe where we are, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. And again, I don't care about the politics of it. But everybody and his brother for 2 weeks was talking about Trump going on CNN, right? We have 330 million people that live in this country. And everybody talked about it was the highest ratings that CNN has had in maybe ever, certainly in a long time. You know how many people watch that town hall? Do you see the number of people that watch that town hall on CNN? That everybody and his brother has come out of the woodwork, good, bad, and different. 3 million people out of a country with over 330 million people. And CNN is on every single way you can watch television. That's not like one of those, deals where maybe it comes along with a program. It's on everything. 3 million people watched. Thursday Night Football in the National Football League on a streaming service last year drew 17 million people per game. That's how strong the National Football League is. And Amazon wants that number. They want that 400,000 and then some back, paying $1 billion a year. Right? They don't want to see the Texans and the Jaguars. So they're asking the league to help them. And the question is, where we started this whole thing is the league bowing down to player safety by doing it? 17 million Americans watching a Thursday night on a streaming service. When most games, as you point out, brutal. Right? Not all of them, but most of them. It's unbelievable. NFL is king, man.
By the way, Tom, there is one team that I'm seeing right now that plays 2 Thursday night games, and that's the Bears.
Hell yeah.
Why? Out of all, whatever. Two primetime games slotted for the Bears. Okay. I don't know.
Okay.
What are we doing with a Titans-Steelers matchup?
Well, I mean, look, in past years, that's been a good matchup.
But Titans were terrible last year, and the Steelers, I guess they've been a winning franchise for 20-plus years now, but I don't know. Some of these matchups don't make sense to me. Like, Jaguars at Saints? What are we doing? Like, what appeal is there to any of that except for it's just 2 random teams?
Well, I know, but you can't give the big game to every broadcast entity every week. I mean, you've got Sunday Night Football. People forget. The highest rated show on television every year by far is the 425 Fox window on Sunday afternoon, which just goes to show you again that you don't have to play games in prime time to get monster ratings in any sport. You don't have to put games on at 10 o'clock at night where nobody can watch it. The highest rated television program in the United States for 20 years is the Fox 425 window. But you can't give Fox, they're the ones that are paying the most money, Fox, CBS, then NBC, and then, Monday Night Football somewhere in there, and then Amazon. You can't have the biggest game of the week on every Thursday night, especially when you're streaming it. You got to have your best games and your best teams on free TV, right?
Yeah.
You got to. So, on this part of it, the NFL, they're in a no-win deal. They're doing the best they can to make sure that Fox feels good about its schedule, CBS feels good about its schedule, NBC Sunday Night Football feels good. Monday Night Football, there were some dreadful games on Monday Night Football forever after being the marquee event in the league forever. And now you got Thursday night. And they're going to mix in some Saturdays, right?
Yeah, I was just also looking. Jets are also one of the teams that have technically 2 Thursday night games. One of them is on a Friday on the 24th.
Yeah, Black Friday.
Black Friday against the Dolphins. Is that somewhere not in that's not in New York, is it? That's one of the well, maybe it is. I don't know. But then it's the last week 17, Jets at Cleveland.
Somebody reported that the Bengals volunteered
Here's what I found.
to be the Black Friday game now and forever to the NFL. I think that is a stroke of absolute genius by somebody in the Bengals organization. I for the life of me, now that Burrow's on board, I have no idea how that team's not playing on Thanksgiving. I mean, you looked last year at the 4 highest rated teams in the National Football League. The Bengals were number 4. I don't know how in the world they're not playing on Thanksgiving. I think we all agree that, look, because of money and because of Ford and the relationship that the Ford Motor Company has had with the NFL, they're never going to lose playing on Thursday in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. The Cowboys are the Cowboys. Every network wants them. They're going to play Thanksgiving. I just can't understand how the Bengals aren't playing on a Thanksgiving Day. But they said, okay, if not Thanksgiving, we'll take Black Friday the next day. And they're not even on that this year. What do you think the ratings would be like for a Black Friday game? Insane, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why the league says it doesn't matter. Everybody's off work. Most people are off work. Casey and Paul aren't off work.
No.
Were you guys off last Black Friday?
I was in Portland on Black Friday.
I don't remember, to be honest. I don't usually shop Black Friday, so I don't really care to come in and work. So
Okay. All right.
Tom, you had one other topic before we get to box lunch. You had one other thing that you wanted to talk
I'm
about.
going to get
today.
in, and I'm not going to be able to get into it that deep, but, something hit me yesterday that I saw right before my very eyes. And there's so many arteries off of this. I need to think it through a little bit more. I mean, it directly affects, maybe my family. What happened was, okay, so yesterday and tonight, our son's a lacrosse player at Marymount High School. They're playing for the regional championship tonight. They're playing against CHCA. And the girls at Marymount were playing in the regional semifinals at Marymount last night. So the boys' team had a practice early, right before the girls' game, so they could get off the field and let the girls and the crowd and all that stuff come in. So the team watches film for 45 minutes, and now they're just going to come out and have guys run around a little bit because they had played the night before in the regional semis. And they're going to have these, 15 to 18-year-old kids run around, just get loose, whole deal, work on a couple things, and in and out, 35 minutes, tops. Here we go. I saw a kid break his leg. One of the better players for the Marymount team, kid named Nick Simmons. He's had a really nice year. In fact, he's up for the Cincinnati Enquirer Player of the Week this week. And I'm sitting there because I had gone over for the girls' game, and I'm sitting there in the parking lot just kind of watching the boys practice, and all of a sudden I see this kid fall down on the ground. And I'm like, ooh, that doesn't look good. And I knew who it was because I know all the players, their numbers, and they wear the practice, whatever those things are called. And I see him try to get up, and he sits back down, and he's got to get helped up, and off he walks to the locker room to get looked at by the trainers. Turns out, we find out later, a broken leg. So, a lot of the guys on the team are really upset. Our son comes home, and they're just like, man, you can't believe it happened to Nick, and one of the parents of the girls' game says to me, well, next man up. And what's the first thing that you guys said to me when I told you this story? First words out of your mouth, right? Next man up. And it got me thinking last night, and you guys just kind of reinforced it. What does that mean, next man up? And all the repercussions of that. In this case, for some guy who hadn't played all year long and now is playing in the biggest game of his young life, and the expectations, talked about those earlier, expectations. This young person, whoever it's going to be, okay, they're going to go into a position on the field tonight in a varsity game. In the biggest game of the year, there'll probably be 3,000, 4,000 people at this game tonight. And the expectation at the school that you play for every single year when the season starts is to not get to the state Final Four. It's to win the state championship. That's the expectation. And so now all of a sudden a 14 or 15-year-old is carrying that burden of next man up. I'm all about pressure, man. I'm all about it. Give me the guys that have been through the pressure in life. I'll take those guys on my team all day, every day. And even if they fail, they're right there and ready to handle it. And if not, right now, they move on and they learn from it and they get better the next time. But Reed Mouse, you were a high school athlete.
I was. Not a very good one, yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to say it about a pro player. Mm-hmm. These guys are getting paid a lot of money. They've been through the big high school game. They've been through the big college game, right? Or say some guy at Alabama or a guy at Ohio State or Phil in Michigan, whoever, right? Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys, for next man up, that has an incredibly different meaning than a 15-year-old.
Listen, it's nerve-wracking. You play to be in those situations, but it does apply an unneeded amount of pressure for a kid that already knows what he's going into. Right? You don't need to add on to it. Someone put in the chat, it's like when a kid's pitching on the mound, 13-year-old kid, 12-year-old kid, can't find the strike zone, and some dad from the stands or some dad from some coach yells, "Throw strikes!" Basketball game. Misses a layup. Make your layups.
Well, that would have been me.
You're not helping anybody there.
Right.
You're just adding more pressure on the kid. You're just almost putting a magnifying glass on his performance tonight or her performance tonight.
I think it'd be interesting to get, and I'm going to look into this, because I find this kind of stuff so interesting, just from having coach use sports and see the difference. And there's just, look, there's one end of the spectrum to the other about what kind of pressure or expectations certain coaches put on, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, as opposed to what other ones, a nice little pat on the fanny. I know you tried hard, and look, that style might work too. I don't know. I never bought it, but that might work too. There's a moment for that. Even if you're a hard ass, there's a moment for those times too. But, we got to get some sports psychologist on here sometime to talk about the difference between a person who's 22 or maybe a college kid who's playing at one of those programs who's 19 as opposed to a kid who's put in that situation at 14 or 15 or like you're talking about, even younger,
right?
Pitching in like some not-whole semifinal game, right?
Right. You know what's funny, Tom? This bridges what you're talking about on so many gaps. So who does Luke play tonight?
They play CHCA.
Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy, the Eagles, in the regional championship. Next man up. When I was a junior in high school, we're in the regional championship for baseball, and we're playing Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy.
Good baseball program.
Yes. They had a kid named Cameron Varga who ended up getting drafted in the second round, struck out 300 kids in 2 years. He gave up 2 earned runs in his entire career. I had a broken ankle all season long. I come back for the regional championship game, and we're facing off against Cameron Varga. He struck me out 3 times. Next man up, though, Tom. Got a home run. We won, though. We beat him. One of the 2 runs that he gave up were in that game. We won 1-0.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's big time.
Beat Cameron Varga.
And Baden's right back in the hunt. I think CHCA still is in the hunt for baseball.
Yeah, I don't know if they're Division II or Division III.
No, but I'm saying they're both still alive in baseball.
Yeah.
They both got great programs. Somebody said in the chat, your Baden guys were lucky to win yesterday.
Yeah.
Is that right or wrong?
Not
Extra
right.
innings? Is that right? Did I read that?
No, they won 10-0 in 5 innings.
Oh, well, I don't know what somebody made reference. I thought they were saying it was in extra innings.
No.
Okay. All right. Baden Rams.
26-1.
Liberal elites.
Something like that.
I remember specifically playing basketball in high school. I was playing JV, and I remember my coach was pushing for me, maybe trying to get the call up to varsity at the end of the year. And I will never forget this. I was having a pretty bad stretch of maybe 4 games, and the varsity team was playing right after. So the varsity coach is sitting in like the 4th or 5th row of the stands. And I was going over to inbound a ball on the sideline. I had missed like 3 shots in a row, maybe 2 turnovers. Terrible game. The coach looked at me and screamed, and in a quiet gym as loud as he could, and he just screamed at me, "Play better." And I was like no advice, nothing, just play better. And I was like, what do you want me to – is there any – please help. I would love to know what you want me to do to play better. So now anytime anything comes up where it's just I don't know what's going on, just, hey, play better.
Play better.
Play better.
Hey, got to bring the goods. NCN. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, it's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Bring the goods. Nutcutter Nation unite. Box lunch. Gentlemen, see you tomorrow. By the way, tomorrow, Willie Anderson, Ring of Honor for the Bengalis,
Yeah.
right? He's got a big camp coming up with John Kitna, who is a new head football coach at Lakota East, right?
Yes.
Okay, so they're doing some kind of a football camp, and Willie Anderson's going to be there to help coach up young offensive linemen. He'll be here to talk about that in his Bengals career a little bit. We have your good friend and mine, Ron Coomer.
My good friend for sure.
I love Ron Coomer.
Listened to Ron my whole life.
Longtime Major League player, has been the radio analyst alongside Hall of Famer to be later this summer, Pat Hughes, calling the Cubs games. He'll be here to talk about his career a little bit, also talk about the Reds Cubbies series, which will start on Friday, right? Is that at Wrigley Field?
It is. It is on the north side. 1:20 start, 2:20 Eastern time.
That's why I had to ask him for tomorrow,
All
because
right,
I knew we
'cause
had
you
a
got the
day game.
Do you like that they still do that?
Oh, yeah. Fridays
That's
are
the
great.
best.
Yeah, the best. No doubt. No doubt. Friday afternoon, fantastic.
Nothing beats it.
Yeah, yeah. They've changed a lot of things there, but that they have not changed.
Right.
I don't think they're allowed to change it.
Weekend day games.
But it's great, yeah. And so he'll be with us tomorrow. Tracy Jones will be with us tomorrow. So we got lots going on. All right, gentlemen, nice to see you.
Yep.
Go Warriors.
Go Warriors.
Go Warriors.
Go Warriors.
All right.
Go Warriors.
Box lunch.
Let's go.
Here we go.
I must admit, I didn't think much of this show the first time I laid eyes on it. Seemed like a bunch of stiffs wasting nice
The worst trade
microphones.
of all time happened back in 1803. Go ahead. Napoleon Bonaparte traded the Louisiana Purchase for $3 million. Napoleon, what happened? Half the country for $3 million. You can't even get Tucker Barnhart for $3
Then
million.
I came to realize
anymore.
these guys are funny.
And Justin Fields have identical stats the last 5 weeks about throwing the football. This guy, okay,
And
folks,
are
is a
some of the
fidget
best
spinner.
gamblers I've come to know.
If you're betting on USC and or TCU, let it be known you are a square.
TCU is going to hammer this team tomorrow night.
And I hate to hear that. 'cause
Tomorrow
when we come back
afternoon.
in here on Monday, you're going to be happy as a lark because USC lost, but you're going to be wrong about TCU.
Get ready for the most useless hour of your day. It's time for Boxed Lunch, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Now, Casey, run that track.
Paul did not like that one based off.
I was out on. I'm out on that. Usually I'm pretty
don't like-
forgiving on that one. I'm sorry, Casey. I was out on that one.
Don't like the bass drop? Give it a grade.
Getting it.
1 to 10. You can use decimals.
Listen, see if maybe it can redeem itself. I'm gonna go.
That's about it.
I'm gonna go 5.3.
5.3. Paul's at all that matters. And for George Santos, who asked, no, that is not me doing the Morgan Freeman impression. I cannot do a Morgan. I do a nice Kermit the Frog, but that's about all the impressions I get. Timeout. They were roasting me for what I was wearing in the chat. What is wrong with my outfit? Can someone please let me know? This is not a small. It's a large.
A schmedium.
It is a large. This is what I wear to Zach Bryan concerts. I'm a big Zach Bryan fan. Normally get the mustache growing out, just like Zach has. This is what I wear for the Zach Bryan concerts. So, what's wrong with what I'm wearing? Guys, do you have any objection to what I'm wearing?
No.
Thank you.
You're looking
That's
good,
all,
Reed.
that's all I needed.
Yeah, I don't.
You're looking great.
Yeah.
I mean, the shoes look a little dirty. There's no doubt about that. That just is what it is. All right, guys, this is Box Lunch presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Abbreviated off the bench show, so we'll try to take you through this final hour. We're going to talk about some of the same points that you guys talked about and just kind of go through it. So the first thing you guys talked about on the show today was talking about the Reds' big three. Tom had a take. And Paul, you asked a question to Tom, so I want to ask the question to you, back to you. How much time do we give these big three? Like, how much sample size before we can make an opinion on what becomes of these starting pitchers?
I think these guys have, or at least Hunter Green and all of the. Now, I know Tom says don't buy the hype, and I understand that because you get so many prospects that don't pan out. So I understand the point that he's coming from, and I quite honestly won't argue against that. But I got to see a whole season. And honestly, maybe even more than one whole season But I'm not going to sit here and make any kind of a judgment on a guy this soon into a year. Because baseball is too finicky. There are too many times during a season where you go through droughts, where maybe you aren't finding the zone, maybe something's off in your delivery, maybe your curve isn't spinning the way you need it to, maybe your release point isn't where you need it to be, maybe you're tipping pitches, maybe there's something going on that you just can't figure out, and all of a sudden something clicks deep into the season and you figure it out. If you're going inside of a season, I would say the middle of June. I would give these guys 4 more starts. If you're talking about like a career judgment, like on like DFA versus a trade or anything else.
I think what I'm asking is at what point do these 3 pitchers are such a linchpin to the future success of the Reds. At what point do you see enough of them? Do you make it a judgment to say, these are the guys we're riding with, or, hey, we'll keep giving them chances, but we need to start looking at other options to be the starting rotation of this team going forward?
Yeah, I think you have to ride these guys as long as you can because you've invested too much of your franchise into these pitchers to not give them the opportunity to be the future that you think they're going to be. Because if they don't pan out, then basically what you've done is you've put all of your investment into these guys to then have it backfire on you, and you're restarting from the pitching perspective that you were hoping would be what you could rely on to a point, because they're starting to get things going with a lineup, right? You have Matt McClain, you have Encarnacion Strand waiting, you have Ellie De La Cruz, you have some of these guys waiting in the wings that are going to hopefully burst onto the scene. But it's been the pitching that you got to replace Luis Castillo, you got to replace Sonny Gray, you got to replace Trevor Bauer, you got all these guys that
Tyler Mahle.
You thought maybe, you thought, oh, well, let's keep these guys around for a few years. Didn't keep a single one of them around for a few years. So now you're trying to build this rotation into that. I'm giving these guys a year. And maybe even longer than that. Like, you've invested way too much of your franchise to restart just because they've had maybe subpar Mays.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, one thing that Abraham put in the chat was the phrase, they'll be fine. We're hearing this about those 3. We're hearing this about Tyler Stevenson. And that might be the case. That really might be the case. But I don't think that you can continue saying they'll be fine and it keeps being reassuring. You can't just convince yourself like, hey, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. You got talent. Be fine. Because it's not always fine. That's the point that Tom was making. He wants to see not what you do in the minors, what you do in the majors. And for reference, Hunter Green's thrown 150 innings. Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft have thrown about 130 innings in their professional career, in their major league career. So I'm with Paul when I say you've got to see a little more time, right? Not just for this year, give them to the end of this year, and then what are we looking at? 350 innings career? Then you start going, all right, what do we have here? Hunter Green, I think, is a special occasion because I think he gets a little more rope. I know that the Reds just signed him to an extension, but there is a matter of fact that Hunter Green came out of high school. Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft, they had college experience, and we've seen what college players have produced more so than high school players, right? You got a higher rate on returning college guys and turning them into professional players. So I think you give Hunter Green a little more time. He's a little younger, a couple years younger than Nick Lodolo and Graham Ashcraft, so you give him a little more time. But end of this year, things haven't gotten better. You got to start looking around. What does the future of this rotation look like? What's the circle? What's the year that everyone's circling? 2025?
2025. Yep.
So that means that you've got to see significant improvement at the second half of this year and next year. So, yeah, give them to the end of the year. And then if it hasn't gotten better, you adjust the focus. You go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Catching up on the chat right now.
Everett was very concerned about Chatterbox Idol. So I was just clarifying that we do have Elliot.
Okay. Yeah.
We do have Elliot. No, yeah. So Chatterbox Idol isn't happening, but we do have Elliot Rearing, who you may have seen on Twitter yesterday. You want to throw this up? You want to get this tweet up there?
Yeah, let's bring it up.
Let's put our guy Elliot up there.
Let's take this Chatterbox Idol. We
I'll
interviewed
send it
a bunch of people, right? Me, Paul, Casey, Trace. We all brought him in, met with people, and we decided Elliot was great. And if we're going to put some help back here, might as well get the sure thing. And we realized what Elliot was, and we said, all right, let's give Elliot a ride. So Chatterbox Idol, it's no more, but Elliot's going to come on here soon, next Tuesday, right? After Memorial Day. The Zebra, as he's so colloquially
This
known,
is good.
on
This is
1530.
good. This made me laugh.
Quirky. It's great.
Go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Elliot Rearing. I'm about to make my decision. You know, Mo Egger, my good close personal friend, he gave me the nickname the Zebra. I couldn't find the zebra, so we're stuck with this half zebra. Looks like a zebra made love to a deer. My decision, I, Elliot, half zebra Rearing, will be taking his talents to Chatterbox Sports.
That's great.
Good stuff.
That's an Okapi, right?
Okay, I had never heard of that.
So
Justin Thomas tweeted at me about an Okapi last night, and then Alex Hines puts in the chat about it too.
that's an Okapi, which the only reason I know what an Okapi is because I've been to Animal Kingdom down at Disney World, and they have Okapi there, and they drill in your head like, that's not half a zebra, that is actually a giraffe cousin. It has no relation to the zebra. But it looks like one. It has the same stripes in there. But Elliot, he'll be coming on Tuesday, so you'll see a little bit more of here on Chatterbox. We're excited about that. So that's what happened with Chatterbox Idol in short, is we decided to go a different route. So we're excited for Elliot Rearing. Another E-Train here at Chatterbox. And it's gonna be a feud on who the real E-Train is. Eddie Trainer or Elliot Rearing. So all right, let me ask you guys another question about the Reds. Every major league team at the All-Star break gets an All-Star. At this point in time, are the Reds a multiple All-Star team? Or who is the Reds All-Star? Chat, who do you guys think the Reds All-Star is? Like, if the All-Star ended today, who's going to play in the All-Star game?
Friedel?
TJ Friedel?
Jacob points out Alexis Diaz.
Yeah, Diaz.
Diaz, I guess.
Let me take a gander around.
The chat wants David Bell to manage the team.
David Bell.
The National League manager.
I love how you had to explain to Tom yesterday the extend Bell.
He was like, people really want to extend David Bell. I was like, well, yeah, the chat does.
I do, too. Extend David Bell.
Pay the man.
He's great. He's the future of this franchise. Great manager. Great. From Cincinnati, too.
Yeah.
What more do you need? What more do you need? What about Jonathan India? Jonathan India would for sure be the All-Star because they like to get a name in there. Mm-hmm. Regardless of who has played the best, TJ Friedel has the best OPS plus. He has played the best. But Jonathan India is the biggest name, former Rookie of the Year. It'd be India. Are they getting India and Alexis Diaz in?
Alexis Diaz should be in.
10 saves, 18 innings pitched. They need to throw Alexis Diaz more.
He should be in.
Alexis Diaz has the 5th most innings out of the bullpen. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem.
You got to throw him more.
I didn't know that.
He's your best reliever.
Well, that's David Bell. Watch your
Extend
mouth,
David
Reed.
Bell. Buck Farmer, Ian Jabot, Derek Law, Alex Young all have thrown more innings than Alexis Diaz this year. He hadn't been hurt, has he? He didn't miss any time.
No.
What are we doing? Throw him more. This is new to me. I don't watch the Reds every day. I wouldn't bear myself that burden. Seems like a miserable existence. I feel sorry for all you Reds fans. But Alexis Diaz has the 5th most innings in the bullpen? This is real time. That is crazy. He's your best arm. How do you... In what scenario is Buck Farmer, Ian Jabot, Derek Law, and Alex Young, who have all pitched great, all sub-4 ERAs. In what world should they be getting more innings than Alexis Diaz? Golly, extend bell. That's great. Casey, who would you like to see in the Reds All-Star? Be in the Reds All-Star game?
I mean, if it was based off of a popularity vote, it's probably gonna be India, but
Well, it kind of is off a popularity vote. So
Well, the starters are.
yeah,
the
they're not gonna get a starter in.
I mean, I would say probably Friedel or India, but like Matt McClain hasn't played enough for you to put him in there.
Yeah, it's not even a conversation.
There's really no one else on this Reds team. Diaz is the next closest one.
I could see a scenario in which Alexis Diaz and Jonathan India both make the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Which I said before the year should be one of the Reds' goals. Only the worst teams in the league get one All-Star. You got multiple All-Stars, that means you got a couple bright spots. So if being a multiple All-Star team shows improvement for the Reds. And Alexis Diaz and Jonathan India are right there. Now you got to compare who the other arms are, who they're going against, like Ozzy Albies. I don't know the other second baseman off. Nico Horner for the Cubs would be up there as well. Huh. All right.
Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, you guys talked about this a lot. What are your guys' thoughts on this? You guys gave it a
I'm
type
so
of bow
out
around
on
it.
Thursday Night Football anyway that there is like a small sliver of me that does enjoy that if we're going to be shoved down our throat, at least the games might be a little more exciting, but that's stupid. And the whole premise of it is dumb. So I'm very much obviously against it, as is probably everybody. I haven't really seen anybody that's for it besides the networks and Amazon. But I guess at least if you're trying to take some kind of a positive, maybe we get a consistently exciting Thursday night games toward the end of the year. If you're trying to spin it. But I don't think that's the point here.
Can I be the antagonist in the room?
Uh-oh.
I like it. I like how they can flex Thursday night football games.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. I like the idea of it, but I don't think it's good for the players.
It's terrible for the players.
But like for the fans, like yeah,
it's great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't think you're off base. I'm with you on that. That's my point. Like I think if we're gonna have to be forced to watch these games, all right, but.
Because the Thursday night football games at the end of the year are like almost unwatchable more often than not. Because you kind of got to guess on who's going to be good.
Yeah.
And you could only have, in previous years, only do it one time, right? By the way, you were mentioning the Bears have 2 Thursday night football games. Was one of them Thanksgiving? Casey?
The 24th, I think.
Yeah.
That's got to be Thanksgiving.
So they still only have really one Thursday night football game. I guess Thanksgiving still is... All right, take on Thursday Night Football.
Well, Paul led off there by saying it's not bad for the fans. It's not bad for the fans in the sense that are watching the TV product.
Mm-hmm.
But what about fans that are buying tickets to games 5-6 weeks in advance, planning trips? Primetime games are a big deal. People that have to travel to go see their favorite team play, they search for those primetime games. And you buy those tickets in the preseason. That's why they put those schedules out. So to flex teams out of Thursday night, where it's not, Saturday back to the midday where you can keep that same travel plan, you're basically taking away the priority of the in-stadium fan, which I think is a little bit weird.
But once again, trying to be an antagonist here, Jacob, is that it's how many people is that affecting?
Yeah, I
right?
get that.
Like maybe 1,000 fans at most.
Yeah,
as opposed to the grand NFL product they're now gonna have a better product for millions and millions of people.
That's a fair point.
But you're right. I mean,
people watch the Thursday night football game regardless. Tom said the numbers earlier. I forget exactly what he said.
17 million or something like that.
Yeah. So putting a bad game on, we had bad Thursday night football most of the year last year, and they still got crazy numbers. I just don't feel like flexing the thing was a necessary change because the numbers weren't bad, even though we had horrible games.
Just because the numbers are good doesn't mean the product's good, and I think that's what they're trying to do. The NFL is always trying to make their product better.
Will the product get better the second, maybe it maxed at 2 times, right, per team?
Yeah.
Will the product get better the second time a team's out there on Thursday night?
Yeah. Yeah, can you already see the headlines? One kid or one of the players goes down in the second quarter, misses it. That's the headline right then and there, right?
Hypothetically, that first flexed game, say star quarterback tears his ACL out for the year. Thursday Night Football flex is done. Like
it won't be done.
They'll pull it next year.
No, they won't. Well, if it's a star quarterback, yeah.
If a star player gets hurt, first year of flex.
That's what's so great about the NFL, in all seriousness, is they change the rules every single year. Every single year, the rules are changed just like that. They are so mobile as an organization. It's why it's king. I know the sport is better or more fun to watch than other sports, but man, they are just so mobile. They are always changing things on the fly. Casey, I haven't heard your opinion. You don't like it. I mean, I know we heard it on Off the Bench, but
yeah, I'm not a fan of it. Very similar to Jacob's reasoning too. I didn't mention it on Off the Bench, but he brings up a good point. The fans that planned to be there, and I think it affects more than 1,000, because you're talking about a whole nother team getting their team scheduled from Sunday to now Thursday.
Yeah.
So now these fans that were expecting to be there to watch a football game on the weekend, their ticket is now on Thursday, and maybe they didn't have work scheduled off. You know, I think it's a lot bigger than it is being made out to be. But my main concern is more just the injury concerns and just all the other, like, the product is still going to be bad if a team has to play 2 Thursday night games, especially that late into the season. Those are that part of the season is the most important for recovery, right? And you're taking away some of that recovery for these teams, and I just not a fan of it. Don't like it.
I think that it is, and these are the points that everyone's making, is it is clearly worse for the player. You don't get as much rest. You're on a short staff. But I think us as fans, which is who they're trying to deliver the product to, I think we're going to love it. I truly do think we're going to love it as fans. To where that Thursday night football game is no longer the Panthers versus the Commanders when both teams are 4 games under 500. It is now going to be meaningful football to get the week going, to get the NFL week going. I think us fans are going to love it. Truly do. And barring Joe Burrow getting hurt, barring Patrick Mahomes getting hurt, barring Justin Herbert getting hurt, barring a premier NFL player getting hurt very early on in these flex scheduled games, it's going to be fantastic. So often I feel like rules across the time. And I believe Trace I was talking to Trace about this, and I think he brought this up on the show. When was the last time that a league implemented a major change and it was terrible? Unanimously terrible. And every time they implement these major changes, there is half the people like, yeah, this sounds nice, and half the people are like, this is going to be the worst thing that's ever happened to this league. MLB rule changes this year. It took 3 weeks for people to get over it. 3 weeks. Remember when spring training first started? And everyone was like, dude, these guys are getting strikes called on. This guy just struck out because he didn't get step in the box. And we thought it was going to be the worst thing ever. It hasn't mattered. Very, very small has mattered. I mean, obviously there's been still plays here and there. When the kickoff changed in the NFL to where they make it to where the kickoff isn't going to be as important of the game, and they did that again this year. We're like, this is crazy. Kickoffs are part of the game. What are we doing changing it? Didn't change a thing. You can go all the way back to the 90s when they first implemented instant replay in football games. No, we want the refs to get it on the field. It's going to slow the game down. It's going to make it different. Now, can you imagine watching an NFL game that didn't have an instant replay? Can you imagine watching a baseball game that didn't have instant replay? We want the calls right. Every major change has been welcomed among sports. They aren't doing this on the fly. They're doing this very real. Casey, what's it going to do? What's it going to take for you to change your opinion on this?
I mean, I'm a players first guy, so it's not gonna. I don't think you're gonna make me budge on this. I get it from a fan perspective, from a television watcher, but I genuinely think that when you get down to it, if you're going to make these teams play 2 short weeks back, like just the comparison that Tom put up there, the Bengals playing that Week 11 Thursday night game against the Ravens, there's a potential that they get flexed with the Vikings not being a game that's determined the time yet to a Thursday night game. I think you're going to see a lot worse of a product just because of how you're making it so that these players don't have enough recovery. I'm not a fan of it. I don't think I'm going to budge from that. I'm not a fan of it. There's not much that's going to be able to change my mind. And
maybe I am underplaying the recovery aspect of it. I mean, I concede that it's clearly more time for players to rest is better for the players. And I'm a player first guy too. I truly think that I am. Anytime that I see a big contract or anything, I don't think of the team ramifications. I say good for the player because I want players to get theirs. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we see injuries by, like great numbers of injuries in these flex games. And we immediately go, all right, well, we can't do this anymore, which will happen. That will happen. You're right about that, Jacob. If we see a lot of injuries, they're going to be like, okay, let's send this on back.
I think barring major injury, fans will not have a gripe with it when it rolls around. Because like you said, no one wants to watch the Texans and the Cardinals 3-win teams in Week 17. When
no one wants that.
Games on Sunday at 1 p.m. between 12-4 and 12-4.
Right.
Like, it's going to be good in the moment. Barring an injury or anything crazy like that, I think it's going to be a great change.
And I would see my biggest problem with this change is because it was built upon 1, money, and 2, they are anticipating flexing the games that they scheduled already. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, don't schedule them that way then. Make it, like I said, make it a rivalry day. Like, market it in a way where you're not going to have to flex Thursday night. That's all I'm trying to get at, is that this could have been avoidable. It could have been so much more than what it is, and now it's...
They're already admitting defeat, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they've already admitted, like, we're probably going to change this Jets-Cleveland game. Or, maybe not. Maybe they don't change it at all. But I'm just saying, like...
So you just want them to, preseason, do a better job of...
Yeah, basically, or just market it better, right? Like, I mean, at this point, the marketing of Thursday Night Football is bad because everyone perceives it as what it was last year. And I would argue that in years past, it's been pretty good.
It's always been the ugly stepchild of the primetime game since its inception, which I don't know how long it's been.
Monday Night Football has been the one that, in recent memory, has been bad, if you ask me. Monday Night Football has been the one that nobody watches. And I think the numbers even back that up. Thursday night is the one that has been better than Monday night. But I could be wrong because I've had a lot of good memories with Bengals on Thursday night. That could be clouding my judgment here.
Right.
But I just think that in doing what they've done, they've already admitted defeat, kind of like what you said there, Paul. And it's just like, just do a better job then. Like, it's a primetime game. Like, why are you putting in terrible teams to begin with? So, and I understand maybe every team needs I believe every team needs a Thursday night game. But let's make it a rivalry game then. So it's not just some, like you said, the Cardinals versus the Texans. Why are they even playing each other, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. Just make it a rivalry game.
They were always handcuffed by the fact that the rule that you could only play one Thursday night football game, right? That limits your scheduling opportunities to where you're going to have duds. Like, if you have every team has to play one game to make it fair, then you're kind of handcuffed by what you can and can't put on Thursday night football.
You also only get 5 primetime games, and Sunday night football and Monday night football usually get the choices first, and those big teams get sucked up by those games and can't play on Thursday night.
Yeah, and also the Thursday night football has always been pre-scheduled, right? Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football have been too, but Monday Night Football can't flex, can it?
They've both been able to flex. I think Monday Night Football flex started a couple of years ago.
Right.
Sunday Night Football obviously has always been able to.
Yeah, because it changes just the day one time. How long has Thursday Night Football been around? It's not been
that long.
It hasn't been like 10, 15. It's been like 15 years, maybe.
Right around.
15
I'm not
years?
sure, but right around there.
Jolly's in the chat. He should know. But he also brought up a good point when I was talking about rule changes and when was the last time that a big rule change has been
16 years.
It's been 16.
2006 was the first season.
15, pretty solid guess.
Yeah.
Nice 2007, Everett Henry. So I don't know. I think us as fans are going to appreciate seeing the marquee games on Thursday Night Football. I mean, at the end of the year, they're just going to put the 3 of the biggest games of the week, Thursday, Sunday, Monday, in front of the national audience instead of burying it at 1 p.m. or 4 p.m. We'll see. I think the only thing that detracts it is we'll see how it does with the players, and that's what everyone is saying. So I think it's going to get swept under the rug. All it takes is one marquee player getting hurt on these flex games. And
just to meet a middle ground, I do totally agree, though. Like, as a at-home watcher of, like, a team that I might not watch, it being able to be flexed to something else where I can be like, yeah, every Thursday night is going to be enjoyable. That's nice, especially for someone like me that plays, like, fantasy football all the time.
Right.
Watching that Thursday night game, if it's, like, a stinker,
Stinker doodle.
There's probably not very many fantasy players on that team then as well. So just from that perspective too, I can see where you're coming from a fan perspective.
All right. Last debate topic I really wanted to bring up. We were talking obviously about the Marymount Warriors, lacrosse. He was asking me about my alma mater, Baden, and stuff like that. Here in Cincinnati, Paul knows this.
Yep.
We like high school sports. But there's also kind of this black eye, right? About so I went to the Baden game last night. I felt weird being there. I hadn't been in high school in 10 years, 11 years, whatever it's been. And you feel kind of weird about going to high school games. And if you bring it up, people are like, man, you care about your high school and stuff like that. So Paul is an outsider. Casey is someone who's from the area. Jacob is someone from the area. Is it weird or is it not weird to take ownership and be a fan of your high school, like where you went?
So my take on this, since I've been here in the last 5 years, is that there's a very I don't know if I'm the one you want to be going to for a high school sports take, but I guess as a neutral person,
I actually want to, for someone who's from the outside looking in.
Maybe I am the right person.
Right, you're exactly
okay. So my take on it has been, I think it's kind of cool that everybody gets into the high school scene as much as they do around here. What I get what kind of creeps me out are the people that get so into it and critical of the athletes. If you want to be a fan of the entity of your school,
right?
Yeah,
that is cool. And I really appreciate and respect and like what everybody does around here with going to a football game on Friday night, going to the Baden game. That's great. Honestly, I wish I had that kind of a connection where my high school was good enough to be able. I look once a year in May. I look at all the stats. I see how the football team did in the fall, the basketball team did, and the baseball team did. I check it once a year and just, all right. But I have no athletic connection to my school, and I kind of wish I did. I think it's fun when you look at St. X and Muller and the athletes and the tradition and all of the famous stars that have come out of this area. But when you start getting into this discussion in April about who the third string running back is going to be on so-and-so Division III team, in October, that's where you kind of lose me.
So to sum up your take, and correct me if I'm being wrong here, you appreciate the community aspect of it and cheering for something that you have once belonged to and still belong to. But when you become critical of the team, that's when it gets weird. Like when you start talking about a kid's play, when you start talking about the coach's decisions and stuff like that, when you get critical as we do for professional sports, when you start dignifying The high school player, that's when it gets weird. And I think that's a fair take.
I think the players, I think the coaches can be criticized because a lot of these people are in communities where you might know the coach.
Right.
You know who the people are. You might have grown up with them. You might have played with them at some point. When you get old enough, you've played with some of these coaches. So you know who they are, how they coach, what their coaching style is. The coaches are fine. I do think it's a little weird where you get overly critical of them. But, if they're bad, you got to be critical of them. You got to I mean, these are your kids that they're coaching. So I don't necessarily hold you accountable, or I don't hold it against anybody for being overly critical of the coaches. But when you go online and you start to see some of these discussions, I didn't know anything about Yappy. I don't know about Yappy, so I don't know anything about Yappy. I'd never heard of Yappy before a few months ago, and you introduced it to me. I've never been on it, I don't think, but I know I know the equivalent in Kentucky because that's where I had worked for a few years.
JJ
Huddle? Bluegrass Preps. Oh. Yeah. So I spent some time on Bluegrass Preps and just to kind of get an idea of what everybody was doing or talking about or thinking or the vibes and stuff. And man, I get into some of that. It's like it's tough.
If you guys don't know what Yappy is, it's a blog for high school, and they have forums and stuff like that. And it's basically the parents of kids shitting on opposing teams. Like it is so funny because when I was in high school, my dad, other people's parents, all these parents would collectively be like, stay off Twitter, stay off Facebook. That stuff is just toxic as could be. Meanwhile, they already had their own social media, this thing called Yappy, this thing called JJ Huddle, where they would do the exact same thing. And it was just the most hypocritical thing in the world. And if you get on Yappy, it is a cesspool. It is the worst parts of high school football. But Casey and Jacob, you guys are from this area. What do you think about Cincinnati's connection to their high school and still going out on Friday nights to go to the football game, still caring if your team wins or loses, still caring about the rivalries? Casey, we saw you kick somebody from Goshen in the chat. But what do you guys think about Cincinnati's relationship with their high school after you graduate?
I played football at St. X for 4 years. I keep track of them. I watched games.
What's it called? The Blue Line or something?
Long Blue Line.
Long Blue Line.
St. Xavier Bombers, yes, sir. But my freshman year at college, they went on a run and won the state championship. And I watched almost every game on the live stream on my computer. And going to Alabama, people from other places in the country thought that was the wildest thing to be doing on a Friday night, to watch a high school football game that I wasn't playing and I didn't have any siblings playing in. So I think it's weird from an outside perspective, at least from the experience that I've had, people that aren't from Cincinnati, but I love it. I mean, when they're playing and I'm home, I'll go to the game. Like you said, you went to Baden last night. Absolutely. I love supporting those guys. I still know the coaches. I still know a lot of the players. I don't see why you wouldn't.
I agree. Casey, any differing take?
No, I don't have much of a different take. I will say, however, $1 in the jar. You can become somewhat critical of the players only if and when you are directly involved with
the coaching
staff, or like you've shown up to practice and you've helped out some of those kids, and you might be on the sideline. You're trying to help them and guide them. That's happened to me a few times, at least for Blanchester's sake. Thomas is actually one of the coaches for Blanchester Athletics.
Your best man?
My best man. And we've talked about the team in general, what the team needs to do to get better, what they need to work on, things like that. But yeah, it's weird to me, even that, like, for me, it's extremely weird for like a D5 school, like where I came from, for parents to even be like remotely critical of their kids. It's just weird to me. Yeah. Especially when, like, they're probably not going to go to, this is just something that they're like doing for fun, and it's it's a memory for them. Don't taint it, right? Don't taint the memory of this program and for your kid. So yeah, I mean, I still follow Blanchester Athletics. I still do, and I will defend them if people start crapping on them in the chat. But apparently that makes me a tyrant. That makes me a tyrant if I defend my school. So
So I think we've hit on all the right points here.
Yeah.
It is a cool thing that I don't think just Cincinnati, but Ohio does as a whole, to where we care about where we come from. You know, the old meme in Cincinnati is you meet somebody, one of the first things you ask them is, where'd you go to high school? Because it kind of gives you a baseline of understanding who this person is. Because, you know, I mean, for good or bad, you have your stereotypes of each high school that you know, and you're like, oh, okay, Jacob went to St. X. Stuff like that. Okay, Casey went to Blanchester. Paul went to wherever. John Paul II the Great, whatever it was. But we like that. For people that have always pushed back against when I start talking about, Hamilton High School, Baden High School, Ross High School, all these local high schools that I, know people in the community, so I care about. They'll push back against it and be like, why do you care? Like, that's weird that you care about it. And I will say this, dollar in the jar. Why is it weirder for me to care about the athletics of a high school that I went to, that I know people that are a part of the community in, that I know people that are currently still active in that athletic organization? Why is that weirder than for me to care about the Chicago Cubs or for me to care about the Cincinnati Bengals? I don't know a damn soul that has ever played for the Bengals. I know one guy who played for the Cubs, but that I have so many more connections to these local teams. I have so many more connections to the local communities than I will ever have with a professional organization. But some people think it's weirder to root for a high school than it is to root for a professional team. I've always thought this about high school. Or college. I don't understand how people can, go to the University of Alabama and cheer for Ohio State football. I've always wondered that. That's an interesting dynamic of sports fandom. It truly is.
I think you make a really good point on that too, because there was a tweet that was going viral in the last few days about which teams you've stuck through and which teams are your favorite teams. And a lot of people were quote tweeting it. And so I kept seeing it pop up on my timeline. And I felt like over and over and over again, I would see people have their favorite team. Obviously not 100%, but a lot of people's favorite teams were their colleges. And I feel the same way. And you call me a fraud or call me whatever you want. I just feel like I get more connected with the college atmosphere because you were a part of it.
Right.
You were there and you were part of it. And okay, sure, man, the product's not as good. The players aren't as good, whatever. But I feel like professional sports, or at least to me, have been so malleable in the sense of, growing up in D.C. where I didn't have a team. Then I did have a team, but I was a Reds fan first. Then you worked for the Orioles. You're around the Nationals. You now live here in Cincinnati. It's like, the Redskins were never good while I was there. And then the Bengals now have become good. So it's like I've never really, outside of, my family was huge Bengals fans, but this connection now that you have to college is way different than what you might have or might not have to professional teams. And that's an entirely different deal, because then you get over the age of 18, you get into college, and you're an adult, and it becomes a much different scenario. So you can't even compare the two worlds. But yeah, I think the high school thing around here, I think cheering for the school as an entity is good. I think that once you get into why did Jimmy play like that on Friday? If you're not Jimmy's parent or the running back's parent when the other parent is the quarterback, that's different. If you're just the random fan going to the Fairfield High School football game on a Friday night and you have no connection and you're just, you're not a scout, nothing. You're just, I don't know. I just it's tough for me to be critical of kids like that.
I agree. No, I agree. I actually I was on Facebook recently and I saw this video go viral about something that happened between a Baden family and a Ross family, which obviously those two schools are rivals. And immediately the post, people just went beyond what the post was about and just go like, oh, that's what you should expect from a Ross guy, or that's what you should expect from a Baden guy. That stuff's garbage. Who cares? If you let the rivalries from when you're in high school still play a factor in what you think of people to this day, that's That's bad. Casey, I'm looking at you and Goshen with Blanchester just kicking people. But I say that tongue in cheek. But leave that in the dust. Root for your team. Be supportive. Be optimistic. Don't be an antagonist. And that's it. All right. I just want to say a quick RIP for our Dallas Stars because they're done. Lost 3-0. I was watching the game locked in. Paul, I don't know if you were locked in last night. They gave up a goal in the first minute and a half, then a goal a minute and a half later, and then they gave up the third goal like with a couple minutes to go in the first period. And I was like, all right, well, it's a nice run, Dallas Stars. We got next year, though, Paul.
Always next year for our beloved Stars. Sad that they're done.
The clock's dwindling. Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn, they're getting old.
It's all right. Jason Robertson's right there for us.
Jason Robertson, Mira Hashkin.
Yeah.
Adi. Well, Adi had a bad game last night.
Yeah. Texas hockey. Tough. All right.
In the vault. Got one bet for you.
In the vault.
And it is to bet on the St. Louis Cardinals to win tonight and the Cubs to win in a parlay. Which
shocker. Jacob, you got anything for us? Jacob
which nets you plus 203 on Betfred Sportsbook. Jacob
was on Matt McClain's home run last night.
I used all my luck last night, so
okay.
I don't have anything today.
You guys both hit on the Matt McClain home run, right?
Yes.
Well, Casey kind of did.
Kind of did.
Oh, it was a parlay?
It was a parlay.
You should have seen Casey was texting me at about 9 o'clock last night, and Casey was down bad because he realized the way the game was trending. And Casey had a crazy parlay. Crazy same-game parlay.
It came down to the Reds winning?
Yep.
Yeah, it was a...
Parlay plus.
It was a 2,800 parlay.
Was it what?
2,800. And I had $10 on it.
You're putting in the Paul school of betting where he's almost hitting. Almost.
Well, this one, literally, it came down to the very last hitter. I mean, Jonathan India with bases loaded. If he hits a grand slam, I win the bet. And I even put it in the Discord that I was going to buy a Kevin Newman jersey because he started the rally. He got a single.
Had 2 hits yesterday.
Luckily, I don't have to subject myself to that horror. So, Can
you even buy a Kevin Newman jersey? Or do you have to get that customized?
You probably have to get it customized. Yeah. I don't even think $280 would cover it.
No.
No, there's
probably
no
not.
way.
I'm coming in. I'm going to have to wear a tuxedo on Friday. Paul, you're out on Friday, right?
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here?
I'm here.
Nice. Okay.
I'm just leaving after the show, but I'm here every day.
Okay. Well, Everett, if you have a Marlboro shirt, I'll rock it. It's got to be a schmedium. Can't be too big on me. It's got to be nice and small. All right, guys. Wheel of lunch. Let's
go somewhere that has ketchup.
I like ketchup.
I love ketchup.
It's not as good as mustard, but I like ketchup. If you guys ever think about like what condiments are, like down to like the rudiment of it, like mayonnaise, which is delicious, eggs and oil.
Yeah.
Literally just whole eggs and oil. Ketchup, tomato juice and sugar. It's rock and roll. I don't even know what mustard is. Is it mustard seeds, like crushed up mustard seeds and oil?
Yeah.
Nice. Love it.
Real healthy.
What else we got here? Any suggestions?
Don't know. I don't have anything else.
Guys, the mustache is leaving soon. I think it's going to be gone tomorrow. Did you guys like the mustache? Shall I leave for Casey's
why
wedding?
not?
Oh,
Shall I leave for
I
Casey's
figured there
wedding?
was a Zach Bryan concert coming up. See ya, Sonic.
You're going to want that mustache in the pictures.
There is one.
There is one.
It's up at Cleveland, June 2nd. Lexington, June 3rd.
Okay, wait. I do need this. And this is going to show. Chad Waits puts a super chat in. Sup, everyone except Paul. Bart Scott apologist. I simply searched can't wait on the GIF thing last night on the GIF searcher. And Bart Scott's thing was the first thing that popped up. I have no clue. No clue. Why does Bart Scott hate the Bengals?
He's the guy that said that the Ravens are going to put a red dot on the back of Joe Burrow's helmet.
Oh, he said that?
He's the guy that
I know that. I didn't know he said that.
Yeah, he's the guy that.
He's the guy who said that the Bengals were getting too cocky and they need to be tempered down after they literally won their first playoff game.
Oh, that was this past year.
That was after they won their first playoff game.
He also has some history when he was playing with the Ravens with the Bengals.
Okay.
That's why Casey hates the Ravens.
Not the only reason, but yeah.
All right. Yeah, 'cause Chad was very upset with that. I used that GIF, and I was like, brother, it's the first result.
What we got left on here? God, Skyline sounds good, guys. Gotta be honest with you.
I was rooting for Canes, I'm not going to lie.
Can we go to Gold Star?
Skyline.
Oh, well. Oh, man, we got Frisch's in the chat. We got Frisch's in the wheel.
I put it up there.
I love that. I would love to go to Frisch's today. Oh my gosh! I would have done it again. I did not know that Frisch's has a reputation for. Like, I think of Frisch's as like just Bob Evans. Like, I think of it at the exact same breath as like Bob Evans, but it does not have that reputation anywhere other than Hamilton.
Well,
there it is.
I saw Frisch's catching some hate there.
It catches a lot of hate.
Well, apparently it got sold and the quality's gone down or something. I saw it on a Reddit thread. People were talking about local Cincinnati eateries that have lost quality lately. Frisch's was a major topic in the thread.
BK or TB? Oh man,
TB.
It's a loser. All right, Taco Bell. We got through.
Wait. Before we go off the air, I want to know, Alex Wallace, why did it go down? I'm like I don't know. I used to go to Frisch's all the time.
In college? There's that Frisch's right there.
No, we didn't go. I'm growing up when I'd come here over to visit family.
I love Frisch's. I genuinely did not know that Frisch's had a bad reputation until I went north for school, and people were like, "You go to Frisch's?" Like, yeah, I go to Frisch's. They're like, "Oh man." Did not know it had a bad reputation. Genuinely did not know.
I know there are some Frisch's in like bad spots that they're kind of run down, but food-wise, I didn't know that either.
Alex said simply, it's just not as good. So I'll end the show on this story. I was up in Detroit on a baseball trip when I was in high school, and we stop at a Big Boy because Frisch's are big boys, but they're just locally owned, right? And we go to this Big Boy in Detroit, and I order a Big Boy. And they come out, and my sandwich had Thousand Island on it instead of tartar sauce. And I look at him, I was like, I wanted a Big Boy. What the hell is this? They said, oh, you wanted an Ohio Big Boy. So apparently, if you go to Big Boys across the country, they vary what is on their Big Boy depending on what region you're in. In Ohio, we put tartar sauce on it. So the more you know. If you're ever in California and go to a Big Boy, you're not going to get tartar sauce on that sandwich. All right, this has been Box Lunch presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Thank you to Jacob, Paul, Casey for helping out for this second hour. We'll be back on Friday. We'll see you then.